when they take people's lives and livelihoods and treat them like pawns in a game of profit. Someone has to stand up. I did that. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And I'm not going to let them take away the truth of what happened. Not now. Not ever. I paused, letting my words settle in the room. I could feel the weight of them, heavy but truthful. I stand by everything I've said, and I will continue to fight for the people who don't have a voice, for the people who are afraid to speak out. I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for all of us. I sat back down, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was still. For the first time in months, I felt like I had said everything I needed to say. There was no more fear, no more doubt. This fight wasn't about legal tactics or corporate games. It was about what was right. The judge called for a brief recess, and as we left the courtroom, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. We had done all we could. The truth was on our side, and no matter how this went, we had already won. That evening, I sat with Sarah, Jason beside us, watching him play with his toys on the floor. The weight of everything that had happened, everything we had been through, felt a little lighter. There was still uncertainty ahead, but for the first time in months, I felt like the fight was truly coming to an end. I can't believe we're here, I said, my voice full of quiet wonder. I can't believe we made it. Sarah smiled, her hand on mine. We made it because we never gave up, and we're stronger than ever. And as I looked at my family, the ones who had been by my side through it all, I knew we had already won. No matter what happened in the courtroom or in the world beyond, we had built something that couldn't be taken away, a future, a family, and a purpose that would carry us forward. The fight had been long, but the end was finally in sight. We had made it through, together. The days following the courtroom session were long, filled with a mix of anticipation and fatigue. We had given our best shot, laid out the truth, and fought back against everything the company had thrown at us. But still, a lingering unease haunted me. The legal process had a way of dragging out, and though I felt like we had presented an undeniable case, there was no telling how the judge would ultimately rule. The next few days passed in a haze. Sarah and I went about our routines, trying to stay normal, trying to shield ourselves from the constant barrage of pressure. We spent time with Jason, tried to keep him distracted, focused on his recovery. At night, Sarah would fall asleep beside me, her head on my chest, and I would lie there awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the storm to break. Then, a week later, we received the call. It was Gabe, and his voice was filled with a strange mix of relief and gravity. "John, it's over. The judge has made his decision." I took a deep breath, suddenly feeling the weight of it all. My body tensed. What did he say? "He ruled in your favor. The company's claims were dismissed and the settlement stands." The judge also issued a ruling that the company must issue a public apology, as originally ordered. They're also being held responsible for any damages they caused. It's a full victory. I couldn't process the words at first. It felt unreal, like I was hearing the announcement through a fog. But then it hit me. The truth had won. We had done it. I leaned back against the wall, exhaling slowly, and I heard Sarah's soft footsteps behind me. When she saw the look on my face, her expression shifted from concern to cautious hope. I held up the phone to her ear. "It's over," I said, my voice thick. "We won. It's over." She listened for a moment, her eyes searching mine, and when she hung up the phone, she just stared at me for a long time. And then, without a word, she wrapped her arms around me, holding me tightly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt like all the weight of the past year was melting away in her embrace. "I knew you'd do it," she whispered. "I knew you'd make it." "I couldn't have done it without you," I murmured, holding her just as tight. We did it together. The rest of the day passed in a blur of emotions. We called our team, our clients, and people who had supported us along the way. We shared the news with our family and friends, and for the first time in so long, I felt like I could breathe. We were going to be okay. The world hadn't crushed us, and we had won not just a legal victory, but a victory of spirit. That night, we sat down to dinner as a family. Jason, his energy returning as his recovery continued, sat across from us, laughing as we joked around. It felt so normal, so grounding. After everything we had been through, after all the sleepless nights and anxiety, this was our moment of peace, and it felt so sweet. Later that evening, as we sat together in the quiet of our living room, I found myself reflecting on everything we had accomplished. It wasn't just the legal victory, it was the journey itself. It was the truth we had fought for, the integrity we had kept intact, and the future we had fought to build piece by piece. "I don't know what's next," I said softly, breaking the silence between us. "But I know we're not stopping. We've built something good, something real, and I'm ready to keep fighting for it." Sarah smiled, her eyes warm and confident. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. We've already been through the worst, and look at where we are now." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. I had never felt more certain about anything in my life. We had fought for what was right. We had stood up to a powerful force, and we had come out the other side stronger than before. This wasn't just about me, or Sarah, or even Jason. It was about every person who had ever been overlooked, undervalued, or pushed aside by a system that didn't care about them. We were the voices that had fought to be heard. The battle with the company had ended, but our work was far from done. There were still challenges to face, but now we were doing it on our terms. The consultancy we had built was growing, and it wasn't just about helping companies. It was about changing them, transforming the very core of the corporate world. We had built a future where employees didn't have to sacrifice their dignity for a paycheck, where honesty and transparency were the foundation of success. We knew that the fight for corporate integrity was ongoing. There would always be more battles, more obstacles. But with the victory we had won, with the foundation we had laid, we knew we were ready. We had already beaten the odds, and now we were ready to take on the next chapter. "I'm proud of you," Sarah said, her voice full of warmth and love as she looked at me. "You didn't just fight for us. You fought for everyone who ever felt helpless, and now we're giving them the tools to fight for themselves." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, reaching over and taking her hand. "We're in this together." Together. It was a word that meant everything now. We had weathered the storm, faced the hardest moments of our lives, and come out stronger. And as I looked at the future, with Sarah by my side and the business we were building together, I knew we had only just begun. The fight for justice wasn't over, and neither was our journey. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. We had created something that couldn't be taken away, and with that, we had already won. The real victory was in the road ahead, and I was ready to walk it, with the people I loved by my side. The months that followed were both exhilarating and exhausting. The company's final defeat, the legal victory, and the public recognition had opened doors we never expected. People were talking about us, about the work we were doing, and the impact we were making in corporate spaces. But while that recognition was gratifying, the real reward came in the form of the stories shared with us by those whose lives had been touched by the work we were doing. I spent less time looking back at the battle with the company and more time focusing on the future. The consultancy was expanding, and we were growing faster than I ever imagined. With Sarah and I at the helm, we brought in experts who shared our vision. Our team grew, people who were passionate about corporate integrity, transparency, and creating workplaces where respect for employees came first. But with success came new pressures. Running a business was no simple task, and as we secured larger clients, the stakes grew. There were nights when Sarah and I would stay up late, planning, discussing and strategizing about the direction we wanted to take. We wanted to make a lasting difference, not just change a few companies here and there, but to create a ripple effect that would spread across industries. "Do you ever think about what we've done?" Sarah asked one night, after we had wrapped up a meeting with a potential client. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window of my office, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "I do, a lot. It's strange, really. We went from fighting for survival to building something we can be proud of. But I think that's what this has been about all along. It's not just about taking down the big guys. It's about giving people a chance to be heard, giving them a platform to stand up for themselves." She nodded, her gaze focused on me. "I never thought we'd be here doing this. And I know we've been through a lot to get here. But we've made it. And we're doing good work, John. You've made sure of that." Her words filled me with gratitude, but also a deep sense of responsibility. The work we were doing mattered, more than just turning a profit. We were helping people who had been mistreated, giving them the tools to rebuild their lives. It wasn't just about what we were offering companies, it was about how we were changing their understanding of what success really meant. Success didn't have to come at the expense of employees. We were showing them that they could thrive, while also doing right by their people. Our clients were seeing results. They were adopting new policies, improving their internal cultures, and addressing the inequalities that had long been ignored. We were creating a ripple effect, a chain of change that was expanding beyond our expectations. It wasn't just about fixing a broken system. It was about building something better in its place. But despite the growing success of our consultancy, there was still a part of me that wondered if we had done enough. The company that had tried to crush me, the one that had hurt so many others, it was still out there, continuing its practices in a new form. I knew it was naive to think we could change everything with one victory, but part of me wanted to keep fighting. Part of me wanted to make sure that no one else would have to suffer the way I had. One evening, while sitting at my desk late, I received an email from one of my former colleagues at the company. The subject line was simple: "Change is possible." Opened it with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The message inside was brief but powerful. The former colleague shared that, in the wake of the legal defeat, the company had begun to implement a few changes internally, inspired by the attention and the pressure they had received. They had started working on a more employee-centered approach, focusing on better benefits, more transparent leadership, and the establishment of an ethics board to ensure that their actions were aligned with their values. "They're not perfect," the message said, "and they're not going to fix everything overnight, but something has shifted. I think we all needed to see that change was possible." I sat back in my chair, staring at the email. A part of me felt satisfied. The company had been forced to change, to see the consequences of their actions, but another part of me couldn't help but feel bittersweet. It shouldn't have taken so much pain for them to do the right thing. But maybe that was the point. Change wasn't easy, it wasn't always immediate, but it was possible, and maybe, in some small way, we had helped show them the way. The next morning, I shared the email with Sarah. She read through it quietly, and when she finished, she simply nodded. "Sometimes the biggest victories come when we least expect them," she said, her voice thoughtful. "Even if we didn't change everything, we did enough. We did more than enough." As I looked at her, I realized that she was right. The fight we had fought had been about more than just bringing down a corporation. It had been about planting the seeds for something better. And now, we were watching those seeds grow, one client, one company at a time. The road wasn't over. The challenges weren't gone, but I had a new understanding of what success looked like. It wasn't about winning every battle. It wasn't about perfection. It was about progress, about doing what we could when we could, and about showing up every day to fight for what was right. As the days passed and the consultancy continued to thrive, I began to realize that this new chapter in our lives was the one that truly mattered. We had faced the worst and come out the other side stronger, and now we were making a difference, one step at a time. And as we looked ahead, I knew there would be more battles to face, more obstacles to overcome. But with Sarah by my side, with the team we had built, and with the drive to keep pushing forward, I was ready for whatever came next. Because I knew, no matter what, we had already won the most important fight of all. We had changed the world, one person at a time. It was a few months after the final court ruling, and life had settled into a new normal. The consultancy was flourishing, but more importantly, it had become something larger than just a business. It had become a movement. We were changing corporate culture, one organization at a time. We were creating workplaces where people were valued, not as numbers, but as individuals who contributed something real. But with all the success, there were moments when I'd catch myself reflecting on everything that had brought us here. The fight with the company, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, and the people who had been there for us along the way. As much as we had accomplished, I often thought about the lessons I'd learned. That justice wasn't always easy to come by. That the truth often needed to be fought for. and that real change took time. But above all, I learned that you couldn't give up, no matter the odds. One afternoon, Sarah and I were sitting in our office reviewing the progress we'd made with a new client. We had recently secured a partnership with a major tech company, one that had a reputation for mistreating employees. But after several discussions, they had reached out to us, asking for help. They wanted to create a better environment for their staff, one that didn't rely on pressure tactics, unreasonable expectations, and a profit-at-all-costs mindset. As I sat there looking over the proposal for the tech company, Sarah turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "You've come so far, John. I know you didn't think it would ever be like this. We both thought we'd be stuck in that fight forever, but look at what you've built. Look at what we've built." I smiled at her, feeling the warmth of her support. "We've built something we can be proud of," I said, my voice filled with a sense of quiet pride. "But we're just getting started. There's so much more to do. I had never imagined that my journey would lead me here. From being a man without a job, facing the unthinkable, to building a consultancy that now had clients from all walks of life, corporations, nonprofits, even smaller businesses that were just starting to grow. But I couldn't help but feel that we were still at the beginning of something even bigger. The work we were doing wasn't just changing the way companies did business. It was changing lives. Later that evening, I found myself sitting at the dinner table with Sarah and Jason. It was a rare night where we weren't thinking about contracts, meetings, or legal challenges. We were just together, enjoying each other's company. Jason, now healthier after his surgery and full of energy, sat across from me, asking questions about the world. He was starting to understand the concept of right and wrong, of fairness and justice. I couldn't help but smile at his curiosity. "Dad," he said with that innocent yet perceptive look he always got, "why do people sometimes not do the right thing?" The question caught me off guard, but it also struck a deep chord. I had spent so much of my life fighting for justice, for what was right, and here was my son, in his simple way, asking a question that many adults had trouble answering. "Sometimes, Jason," I said, "people make mistakes. Sometimes they choose to do what's easy instead of what's right. But it's up to people like us to help them see the difference. We don't change the world all at once, but we can make it better, little by little." He nodded thoughtfully as if absorbing the weight of my words. It was a moment I would never forget, watching him grow, not just in age, but in understanding. He was starting to see that the fight for what's right wasn't just something that happened in a courtroom. It was something that happened every day, in every decision we made. Later, as I lay in bed, the quiet hum of the night wrapping around us, I thought about how far we had come. The darkness that had once clouded my life, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it seemed distant now. But the lessons I had learned through that struggle remained close. Justice, fairness, integrity. Those weren't just words to me anymore. They were the foundation of everything I did. The following day, we launched a new initiative with our consultancy, a mentorship program designed to teach leaders within companies how to foster integrity in their organizations. It was our way of giving back, of passing on the lessons we had learned. We had walked through fire and come out the other side. But now, we had a chance to help others avoid the same pitfalls. We were creating a ripple effect that went far beyond. The company we had once fought against, though it had made some changes, remained a reminder of what could happen when greed overtakes ethics. But now, I saw it differently. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't hate them. I just saw them for what they were, a company caught in a cycle of exploitation, and I had been the catalyst for their transformation. That in itself was enough, as I stood on stage a few months later, speaking at a conference about the future of corporate integrity. I could feel the weight of everything we had accomplished. The audience was full of executives, business leaders, and change-makers. They were there to learn how to do things differently, to create better workplaces, to make the world a better place. And I realized as I spoke to them that this was the true victory. Not in the courtrooms, not in the press releases, but in the work we were doing, in the lives we were changing. The company I had fought against wasn't the final chapter of my story. It was the catalyst. The real story was about the future. It was about creating workplaces that valued people first and foremost, where employees could thrive without fear. As I finished speaking and walked off the stage, I looked around the room at the faces of people who were ready to take the lessons we had shared and make them a reality. This was the impact I had always dreamed of, a world where the fight for justice didn't stop with one victory, but kept growing, multiplying, spreading. I caught Sarah's eye in the crowd. She was smiling at me, proud of the work we had done, proud of the difference we were making. And in that moment I knew that the journey we had started together had only just begun. We had faced the hardest battles, fought for what was right, and in the end, we had won not just for ourselves but for a better world. And as long as we stayed true to the principles that had guided us from the beginning, integrity, fairness, and a relentless pursuit of justice, there was nothing we couldn't achieve. Together we were creating the future, and it was brighter than we ever could have imagined. As the months rolled by, our consultancy continued to evolve, and the impact of our work was more profound than I had ever anticipated. Sarah and I had built something meaningful, something that had transcended the original idea of just helping businesses become more ethical. We had found a new purpose, not only in ensuring that companies treated their employees fairly, but in helping them recognize that true success didn't come at the expense of people's dignity or well-being. I had come to understand that the fight we had won wasn't just about the legal victory, or about making sure we received compensation for what we'd been through. The real victory had been in the changes we had inspired. Companies taking a step back, reevaluating their values, and starting to build cultures that fostered trust, respect, and transparency. This wasn't about punishing those who had wronged us. It was about helping others avoid the mistakes we had seen firsthand. We received letters, emails, and messages from people who had worked at companies we had helped. Many of them spoke about how the new practices had changed their daily lives, how they felt valued for the first time in years. Some even credited our work with saving their careers, with giving them hope that things could be different. And it was those messages that kept me going. It wasn't the financial success, it wasn't the accolades, and it wasn't the growing reputation of our business. It was the quiet, meaningful impact we had on real people's lives. But as much as I felt fulfilled by the work we were doing, I also knew that the fight was ongoing. Corporate culture is slow to change, and while we had made incredible strides, there was always more to be done. There would always be companies that tried to exploit their employees, always be organizations that put profits over people. But now, we were equipped with the knowledge, the tools, and the courage to take them on. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in the office, reflecting on the long journey that had brought me here. I thought about my past, the man I had been when I was fired, desperate, unsure of how to move forward. I thought about all the times I had doubted myself, questioned my ability to get through it, and now sitting at my desk, looking out at the skyline, I realized that everything had led me to this point. The losses, the pain, the victories, and the moments of doubt had all played a part in shaping who I had become. I wasn't just a former employee trying to recover what had been taken from me. I wasn't just a man who had fought back against corporate corruption. I had become someone who could lead others in creating better workplaces. And in doing so, I had found my true calling. One day, as Sarah and I sat together reviewing the progress we had made over the year, she looked at me with a smile that made all the sleepless nights, the stress and the hard work worth it. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes I still think about everything we went through, and I realize it wasn't just about winning the case. It was about finding something we could build together, something bigger than us." I nodded, my thoughts echoing her sentiment. I used to think the fight was about getting back at the company, but now I see it differently. It's about creating a future where people don't have to go through what we did, where they don't have to face the kind of corporate injustice we fought against. She reached over and took my hand. And that's why we've been so successful. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about building something meaningful, something that matters. I smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. We had not only won the legal battle, we had built something that was changing lives, and that felt far more important than any victory in a courtroom. As we moved forward, we focused more on outreach and mentorship programs, helping young professionals and companies who were starting to recognize the importance of ethical leadership. We also made a concerted effort to partner with organizations that promoted diversity, inclusion, and mental health within the workplace. We understood now that true success required more than just profits. It required caring for the people who made the business possible. It wasn't easy. Every day presented new challenges. There were always those who resisted change, who clung to outdated practices. But we had proven that change was possible, and that's what kept us moving forward. Every new client, every new partnership felt like another opportunity to spread the message of integrity. Then came the moment that I had both dreaded and anticipated. It was a letter from the company we had fought against, the one that had tried to bury us. But it wasn't a letter of retaliation or an attempt to undermine our work. It was an apology. Finally. A letter acknowledging the mistakes they had made, admitting that their actions had hurt employees like me and countless others, and promising to do better. I remember sitting in the office, staring at the letter in my hands. It was the final step in a long journey, a journey I hadn't expected, but one I was proud to have taken. The company was changing, slowly but surely. The battle, in the end, had made them recognize the value of integrity, and for that, I felt a sense of peace. But what meant even more was how far we had come since that first day I had been fired. We weren't just survivors. We were leaders, showing others that they too could build a future where fairness, transparency, and respect reigned. That evening, Sarah and I went out for a quiet dinner. Jason was with us, of course, growing taller and stronger every day. As we sat there talking about the future, I realized that we had created something sustainable, a legacy not defined by our past struggles, but by what we had built for the future. Our future. The fight had been long and hard. There had been moments when I thought we wouldn't make it, when I wondered if it was worth all the pain. But as I looked around at the life we had built, the business we had created, and the family that had stood by me through it all, I knew the answer. It had all been worth it. Every battle, every sacrifice, every step forward. We had created a legacy of change. And it was just the beginning. It had been a year since the company's apology, and with each passing day, I realized how much our work had transformed not just the industry, but the very essence of what it meant to build something meaningful. Sarah and I had long since stopped looking over our shoulders, constantly worried about the next legal battle. The war had been won, not by brute force, but by the relentless pursuit of truth, transparency, and integrity. The victory was in the quiet moments, the thank you emails from employees at companies we had worked with, the heartfelt messages from people who had been empowered to speak up and stand tall in their organizations. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in a conference room with Sarah and our leadership team. We were in the middle of a brainstorming session for a new initiative, and I was struck by a thought, a simple one, but one that summed up everything I had been thinking about lately. I want to shift the focus, I said, breaking the silence. I want us to be about more than just corporate reform. I want us to build a movement, something that outlasts us. I want our work to be about showing the world what happens when people are treated with dignity and respect. The team nodded, their faces reflecting the same understanding that had taken root in me over the last year. We had started as a consultancy, yes, but now we were something more. We were a beacon for change in an industry that had often prioritized profit over people. And it wasn't just about helping companies survive, it was about helping them thrive, while doing the right thing. Over the next few months, we launched a new initiative, the Integrity Leadership Network. It wasn't just a platform for business leaders to discuss ethics. It was a living, breathing network of organizations, employees, and thought leaders who were committed to creating workplaces where fairness, respect, and accountability were the standard. It was our way of ensuring that the lessons we had learned and the battle we had fought weren't forgotten. We received support from all corners of the business world, from small startups to large corporations that had once been seen as part of the problem. But what struck me the most was the response from employees, from those who had been ignored and discarded. They were the ones who reached out, thanking us for giving them hope, for helping them understand that it was possible to have a workplace that valued them as more than just a number. And as we watched this network grow, I realized something fundamental. We had not just changed the corporate landscape, we had changed the narrative. No longer would people have to fear speaking up. No longer would they have to choose between their integrity and their livelihood. It was possible to do good and still succeed. Through it all, Sarah was by my side, as steady as she had ever been. She had become not just my partner in life, but my partner in this mission. The work we had built together, the legacy we had created, was as much hers as it was mine. As our consultancy continued to grow, we knew we were on the cusp of something even bigger. The phone rang one evening, breaking my thoughts as I was sitting at my desk, reviewing some documents for the Integrity Leadership Network's next big partnership event. It was Gabe. "John, I've been thinking about something," he said after we exchanged pleasantries. "You've changed the world. And I don't say that lightly. The case you fought, the work you've done since, it's all part of a bigger movement. But I think it's time we take this even further. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" A book. The thought of it had never crossed my mind, but as I let the idea settle, I realized how perfect it was. We had a story to tell, yes, but more importantly, we had a vision to share. How a fight for justice could turn into a powerful movement, how one person's persistence could change the course of an industry. It wasn't just about our battle against the company anymore. It was about the principles that had guided us, the lessons we had learned, and the hope we had inspired in others. "Maybe you're right," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Maybe it's time to share everything." And so the idea for the book was born. It would be a story of what we had fought for, the victories and defeats, the mistakes and the breakthroughs. But more than that, it would be a testament to the power of resilience, integrity, and the belief that change is always possible, no matter the odds. The process of writing the book was cathartic, and in many ways, it allowed me to close the chapter on the fight that had started everything. We had come so far, and now it was time to share that journey with the world. I poured my heart into every page, reflecting on how far we had come, from the man who had been fired to the leader who now had the opportunity to help others build something better. As the book neared completion, I sat down with Sarah and Jason one evening, the three of us on the porch watching the sunset. The world felt still, peaceful. It was hard to believe how much had changed, how different our lives were from the chaos of just a few years ago. "It's funny," I said, looking at Sarah. "I thought I was fighting for my job, for what was taken from me. But now, I see that this fight wasn't just for me. It was for all the people who had been pushed aside, for the employees who didn't have a voice. It was for them." Sarah smiled, her hand resting gently on mine. "You didn't just fight for people, John. You fought for a future where everyone has the chance to be seen, heard, and valued. And you've made that future possible." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. This wasn't just a story of one man's journey. This was the story of all of us, of the people who fight for justice, for fairness, for what's right. This was the story of what happens when we stand up, not just for ourselves, but for the world we want to create. As I looked at the horizon, I realized that the fight wasn't truly over. It would never be over. There would always be more work to do, more challenges to face. But now I knew that we were part of a movement that could change the world. And I would continue to fight, alongside Sarah, Jason, and the incredible team we had built, until the world was the place we knew it could be. The journey had been long, but it had been worth every moment. We had built something that would outlast us, a legacy of integrity, of courage, and of change. And with that, I knew our story would continue, for as long as there were people out there willing to fight for what was right.